Hi everyone, and yeah, welcome to this video. This is the first video of a series for the openings, and yeah, for 1d4. As mentioned in my channel description, I'm getting some coaching from a GM, and we've taken time to look at the openings. I think every opening has sort of a different flavor and feel to it, and this is one that I'm just keen to pursue based on sort of the themes and different positions that you get to, and I've sort of had a look at that, and I've played it a fair bit, and it's one that yeah, I'm enthusiastic to get going with. Okay, so this video will be covering the classical Queen's Gambit exchange, but yeah, there will be a few videos in this series. Getting straight on with it, so yeah, it's d4, black plays d5, c4 offering the gambit, and it's declined with e6, knight plays c6, knight f6. Now, just quickly, I'm showing a move order here, but I think it's very important not to, okay, memorizing move orders is a good thing, but I think it's very important to not just memorize move orders, but to actually understand what you're doing and also consider variations in those move orders, and I'll show you what I mean shortly. I strongly recommend bishop g5 here, and I'll explain why soon. The response to this is e7, and then the exchange occurs, bishop e7, then the exchange occurs in the center with c takes d and e takes d. And that's basically the start of the position. It continues then with white playing e3, castles, queen c2, which is already quite thematic because black has this weak light squared bishop, which is yeah, a really recurring concept for the Queen's Gambit, and you're preventing its square on f5, which would otherwise be a good square for it, by playing queen c2 early, and it's quite a nice square for the queen anyway. Continues here with black normally playing c6, and yeah, white developing bishop to d3, knight d7. Yeah, white will continue on with development here, and this is basically the position we arrive at. But as mentioned, I do think it's extremely important to consider what would happen if let's have a look at an example. If things didn't go exactly to what you've memorized, so as mentioned here, normally we're seeing black play c6, and what does that do? Well, we have a look that protects d5, so that's one thing about it, and also it makes and also in this variation the knight comes to d7. But consider what would happen if the knight came to c6. Well, yeah, so as mentioned, we're normally used to this, but this has now happened all of a sudden, and I think it's up to us to really I think it's really up to us to have a proper think about the implications of these, which is why I strongly also suggest playing 15-minute chess or even longer instead of 5-minute or bullet. But yeah, really, what are the threats and what are the absences of this move? Well, the clear threat is it's knight to b4. So if we were to just continue on and forget that there's a difference between that and c6, knight to b4 forces an exchange here, taking both the queen and bishop. The only real move to hold on to the material is something like that, or queen d1. It's not relevant here. But the point is, black achieves that exchange, which would be not desirable for white. So we've got to keep in mind that straight away. So potentially a response to this might be something. So we wouldn't play our typical bishop to d3. We might play something like a3 instead to prevent this theme and take the time to do that move, which yeah, would probably be a worthwhile move in this situation. Just briefly, I can't go into everything because I mean knight c6 as a variation is just one of many, but I'm just sort of trying to explain the way I think, and I think the way that it's important to think. What else is lacking here? Well, normally we know that the knight is sitting on d7. So with the knight now on d6, it's eyeing d4 as a potential, and secondly, it's not covering the knight on f6. So what does that mean? Well, with just sort of typical development, and now we're able to move our bishop here because b4 is no longer a square. Well, let's just say the king doesn't move like that, just something trivial. Well, normally the knight, as mentioned, is on d7, but given that it's not, there's now a liability, because when we take, there's a retake, and now normally the knight would recapture there, but there's no knight, so we can capture on d5. Another issue as well, maybe capturing on h7. So these are all sort of things, these are all sort of variations and different concepts. However, I'll just also mention one more thing, and that's, let's even just say we do capture here, but when the rook comes, we've also got to consider that now there's an extra piece on d5, which wouldn't otherwise be there on c6. So now there's potentially a liability, something like, so it's white to move here, just say something like that. Well, knight d4 now may be an issue, where it otherwise wouldn't have. So look, this is just a very hypothetical position, but as mentioned, I do want to look into a structured move order, but do consider what happens if there's a variance to that move order, and of course that takes time and practice. So yeah, don't be hard on yourself if you don't reach that too quickly. All right, so we've back to where we were. We've queen's on c2, preventing that square. Pawn comes down to c6. We develop the bishop. Knight's on d7, as mentioned, as a backup piece as well to the knight on f6. White continues with his development, and this is just a very fluid, nice position for white, and there's quite a lot of potential that white can be looking forward to here. Yeah, in this position there's a few variations for black, and one common variation is h6, and this is actually already a very big mistake. I'll show you why. Bishop drops down back to f4, and for example, we're going to get rook e8, and white's going to be playing g4. Now, black can take this material, but the reason for this move is the themes that you're going to be trying to exploit. The g file, the fact that you haven't castled as white, so you can castle long, stack rooks on the g file, and there's already big problems ahead for black. Even though black's actually up a pawn here, the computer already has it as almost -1, which is basically the equivalent of being down a pawn, but it's actually almost losing already. So I'll quickly show a variation. So something like g5. Black can't even drop back here because of that sort of tactic, and the pawn is pinned there. So something like there's already so many problems. So h5, long castles. Black might move back at this point, and yeah, you're gonna, as white, you're going to be pursuing stacking your rooks and really looking for a mating sequence here, and it's likely you're gonna really aggressively continue into this game, and it should be, all else being equal, it should be a really favorable game for you. Black will do very well to even just hold on here, but it should be a winning position. So that's h6, and why that's a mistake. The alternative is black can just continue on normally with something like e8, and in this with rook e8, and in this position white will castle short. After castling short, the main idea for white is this minority attack on the queen side, and that's this 2 pawns versus 3. And it's not about overcoming the 3 pawns, but it's about creating weaknesses on the for the black pieces. And I'll briefly show what that's about. So I'm not going to go into detail about black's ideas yet. I'll go into some detail about that shortly, but mainly let's focus on the white moves. So I may just do arbitrary moves for black here. I strongly recommend using your rook as the support for the b pawn, support against, for example, the bishop. For the advanced players do play a3 and then b4, b5, but it is more sound to be using your rook. So yeah, black will play a move, play b4, just do a sort of a nothing move, and then b5 will happen sooner or later. Now there's a couple moves for there's really three potential moves here. There's advancing, taking, or doing nothing, and then recapturing. None of them are very good, and they all produce weaknesses. So just quickly, advancing will okay, there'll be the recapture, but there'll be this isolated pawn, and that's already an enormous weakness for black and a big target for white. So it's really target chess. There's capturing, and it's the same story. There's this isolated pawn, maybe slightly better for black this position, but still very bad. The other alternative is doing, which is the most common alternative, is not doing anything about it, continuing on with black's play, and just recapturing. This creates a backwards pawn. Okay, it's not an isolated pawn, but it's basically conceptually similar, because it can't be protected by a neighboring pawn. It can only be protected by pieces, and when white starts stacking up on the c file with, you know, swinging rooks around or this sort of maneuver, there'll be a huge amount of pressure exerted onto that piece, and it will almost inevitably drop. To wrap this video up, I want to just look at some ideas for black, and also just a few other closing concepts for the white pieces. Black's basically going to try to counter attack in this position, and you'll often see these sort of moves. I'll just do a nothing move for white. You'll often see knight e4 will be a typical move, but this is very nice for white, because you can exchange the dark squared bishops, and immediately going through your mind, if you're playing the white pieces, is exploiting these potential dark squared weaknesses. So maneuvers like with the knight. So I'll show why that can be so nice. I'll just do a nothing move here. Having a knight on that outpost can just be extremely strong, especially, I mean, just on its own, it controls so many crucial squares. All right, in this particular scenario, there's a knight on e4, but typically that will be exchanged, something like that. But yeah, it controls so many crucial squares, and in cooperation with the rook on the 7th, which is sort of a tactical theme you should try to be achieving in most of your games. Okay, the bishop has just walked into this, but otherwise it's just a really strong position. It's just a really strong a really strong piece on c5. It's really a wonder square for that. So yeah, taking advantage of those dark squares is a theme I want to, something I think it's very important to keep in mind. But one last thing to finish on is that I really stress, okay, it's really good to memorize some move orders shown in here, and to remember the themes. But the most important thing you can do is react to the situation that your particular chess game brings. So yeah, in a Queen's Gambit position, you're going to be likely counter-attacked on the king side if you're playing sort of a decent opponent, and you've got to respond. You can't just think, I'll go on with my plan and pretend like it's a generic game, and it doesn't make a difference. So yeah, I think play 15-minute chess, or even longer if you can, instead of 5-minute, and give thought to what you're playing. Yeah, put thought into it. Consider every move and its implications, and yeah, I hope that's some advice that helps you. It's really something I keep in mind and is helping me. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to posting up the video of the next part of this repertoire. Thanks very much.